Let's do a bit of a time lapse first. Hey, good day to everybody watching this video. This is a new series making projects with JavaFX. So in case you didn't know anything about JavaFX or didn't learn about it before, JavaFX is basically a library that has a bundle of classes to help with designing of graphical user interface with Java language. So it is very simple to use, and with very little effort you can make good looking graphical user interface programs on your own. So generally, the syntax of writing a code in JavaFX is different from what we have been doing before. So in our ordinary Java programs, we usually put all our code inside public static void main, so the main method, right? And then we have various methods, various classes as well, and then we invoke everything from the main method, right? But in JavaFX, what we do is that in the main method, we only launch the program, so there's only a single statement in the main method that launch the program. And the program being launched is this one, this public class with its name that extends application. This application is a class on its own, and it has a method called the start method. But the start method in this application class, it doesn't really do anything. So it is like an empty class. So what you do is that you override the class, you override the start method in this application, and you decide what to do on your own. So you give the instructions of what should be done in public void start with the parameter of stage and the name of the stage. So what this stage means is that in a graphical user interface, the outermost layer, you call it the stage. And then sitting on the stage, you have a scene. And sitting on the scene, you begin to have panes and boxes. And these panes and boxes will help you in the orientation of elements. For example, you have Grid Pane. Grid Pane allows you to insert your elements in a very nice and neat grid. And then you have a V box, which is basically means a vertical box. Every element in a vertical box is aligned vertically. So sitting on the pane and boxes, you have label, button, and other elements. And these elements, some of them, they can fire action events. For example, a button, when you click on it, it fires an action event. So you need to set up a proper statement to direct the event to a proper destination. For example, if you want to press on the button and if you want it to activate something or want it to invoke a method with a parameter, that's all up to how you code your program. So if we are going to do a simple calculator, it's going to look like this with a few basic operators of dividing, multiplying, minus, and plus. And then you have the numbers here, and then you have the period, then you have the equal sign, and then you have the C button, which stands for clear the calculator, and you have the back, which will delete one character of the expression you just input. So it looks like this on the right side. Since we don't implement the functionality of recording historical data yet, so the CE and the C button is going to be doing the same thing. Okay, so the first thing is that you need the number of imports to make your entire code works. The first thing is the most basic thing. Let me just enlarge it so you can see properly. So the first thing is that you obviously need the application because you want to extend it. And then you want a stage for the scene to sit on. And then obviously you want the scene. So you need to import the scene. Buttons, and then we have this orange grid pane, and then we have a blue text field, and then we have a yellow V box that are supposed to arrange the text field and the grid pane in a vertical alignment. So we need to import all these things as well. So it's going to be this. So this is the import statement for button. And this is the import statement for text field. And then you need the grid pane and the V box, but they are not under the field of control, they are under the field of layout. So you can see layout, and then you need a V box, this one. And then you need a grid pane. Alright, so I think we have all our imports down already. And then you need to extend application. Okay, so now you need to have a override tag here that basically tells the IDE, the JVM, that the following method is overriding what you are extending. So we are overriding the start method in application. So if I name this stage bacon, okay, so you can see if you are indeed overriding the method, you can see a green button here, and it will tell you what method are you overriding in. So you can see it's telling you that the method is from application. Okay, So this is the first thing. The second thing we do is the usual main method, in which we are going to launch the application. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is that we want a few elements in. We want VBox, we want a text field, we want a button, and my personal preference is that I will put all the declarations outside these functions. What do I mean by outside this function is that I'm going to declare them here. The advantage of declaring them here is that these elements, if declared here, it will be available throughout all these methods, you see, because the scope is this entire public class. But if you want your elements to be more private and secluded, you may put them inside here. But you have to be careful, because when you are trying to do an interactive GUI program, it's going to involve multiple different methods as well as stages. So you may need to use the same element. For example, if you have a text field, you may need the information from the text field from multiple different methods. So it is better to just put it inside here instead of inside the start method. You can name them anything you want. So this is the general syntax of declaring a method. First, you specify what is the type, and then you specify its name, and then you construct them. In Java, the method you construct anything is by using the new string literal. It is a string literal. It is a conserved word, whatever you call it. And then the type, parentheses, and semicolons. So the next thing we want is a text field. Let's go ahead and call it main2. Okay, so it's an empty text field as of now. And then we have a huge array of buttons. We have all these buttons, right? In fact, we have 19 buttons here arranged in the column of 4 and 5 rows. So 4 columns and 5 rows of 19 buttons. So instead of naming the buttons one by one and let them to have 19 total names, what we can do is that we can declare and initialize the button in an array. So it goes like this. Anything you want to do in an array in Java, you need to have the type of the element you want, and you give them a square bracket and the name of the element, and you do something like this, right? And you put everything inside it. So this is the syntax of our button. Or if you don't feel like initializing them just yet, you can also do this. So this is going to be the type, and you can specialize the size of 19. So you don't specialize the size here, you specialize the size only here. So you have a basic in Java, you should know this very well. So let us go ahead and initialize the button with the format just set. Okay, so we are doing it in an array-like method. Okay, so what you're gonna do is that since every single element in this array is a button object on its own, you need to initialize them in this way. And this initialization, it actually takes a parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, you can have an argument which is going to be the content of the button. So we have all these different contents, right? Okay, so this is our array of 19 buttons. We have these 4 in the first row, this 4 in the second row, this 4 in the third row, this 4 in the fourth row, and finally this 3 in the fifth row. So this is our button needed. And then we need our grid pane. So the grid pane is going to be this, and we'll call it something like this. So the naming is up to you, how you see fit and to your convenience. And then if we are going to have our program working correctly, first we are going to have an expression here. So this expression is going to be displayed in the text field, but because we are doing a calculator and the expression is taken in as a string, so we need string of arrays to store our terms and operators. For example, 2 plus 3. You have 2 terms and an operator. So you need array of strings to store term and operators. So let's go ahead and name it string, an array of it called term, and let's do it new string with a maximum capacity of 100 terms. And the number of terms in any valid expression in our simple calculator used is going to be always one more than the number of operators. Because you can see, for example, like 1 plus 2 plus 3, there are 3 terms and 2 operators. For example, like 9 times 8 times 7 minus 6, there are 4 terms and 3 operators. So they are going to be size 99 for the operators. And we want to count the term and the operators to keep track of them. So we need to count the term. Alright, let's just let it be this name and initialize to a value of 0 and counting operators. Finally, we may need to know if the expression is emptied or not. So for example, you need to, in the design of a graphical user interface, you need to visualize what your program will do. For example, if I type 8 times 9 and I press equal, it should output 72. What's going to happen is that if the output is 72 and you type 8, it's going to be 72, but an 8 is going to be appended. But then what's happening is that because you type and enter and everything is calculated already and the terms is not used anymore, so they are cleared off the memory. But if you type an 8, in the expression in text field it will be 728, but in the record of the program, in the first term, its value is going to be 8 only. So it's going to be different. So we need a control variable that indicates whether the calculator is restarted or not. And by restart, I mean whether the equal button is pressed or not. So I'm just going to name it. This is restart. Also, you may need a special character, string character, to hold the value of the latest insert character. What this means is that because you couldn't have 2 operators side by side, let's say you cannot have 9 times divide 8 is not correct, right? You can have 9 minus plus 8. It's going to be very weird. So if you can argue in a mathematical sense, you can always say that 9 plus minus 8 equals to 9 minus 8. But uh, we're not going to tolerate that kind of behavior in our calculator. And 9 plus minus 8 should just simply be 9 minus 8. So what we are going to do is that we are going to need a string that stores the value of the last insert, and it's going to be an empty string at first. Okay, so this is about all the flow controls and the visual elements we need. And next we will start coding in the start method. So inside the first method, we can notice that in this string, it is still empty string, and by default, the elements in an uninitialized string, it will be null. So we don't want that to be null because in the expression, we are going to use the function of appending. So appending a number to a string now, it will going to look like this. So you can't do anything about this. So you want to initialize it to be a empty string. So what you do is you initialize it using a loop. For example, you have 100 elements and you initialize it to, you don't actually need this, and term h is going to be an empty string. So the very same thing is done for the operations. Only the changes is that it is now having 99 elements and name is different. Okay, so this is the very first thing you want to take note of about empty string and initialized empty strings. They are different. So the next thing you want to do is that you want to format your programs neatly, and before that you may want to add all your different functions in there, different buttons. So the very first thing we are going to do is that we are going to add all these buttons to the grid pane. So the syntax is like follows. You indicate the name of the grid pane. You use the .add method, and the .add method actually takes in 5 arguments at most. So the first thing is going to be the element that you want to take in. The second thing is the column, the position of the column you want to take in. The third thing is the position of the row you want to take in, because grid pane is like a matrix. And the fourth thing is the span of the column. What this means is that if you specialize it to be at a row and a column, and you specialize the span of a column to be 2, it will take up 2 column cells and 1 row. So furthermore, if you specialize it to be 2 rows and you declare it to be at position of 2, the second column and the second row, is going to take up a total of 4 cells that spans 2 rows and 2 columns. So since our button is not overlapping, or we don't need any widened button, so we don't use the spanning now, we only use the element and the positions. So the first thing you're going to add is our button, and we are going to specialize the button. The 0th button is the CE button, and it's going to be at the 0, position. So what's different from normal expression of matrix is that the first element is column and the second element is row. This is because in JavaFX, we are going to, in a coordinating system, we are always going for the x-axis first and then only the y-axis. So the x-axis is going to be, of course, the changing of the columns. So the rest is just adding all the different buttons here. So let me just go ahead and pause this video for a while I code all the different positions inside. So you can just, it is only just changing of columns and rows indexes. Okay, we are back. Now that all the buttons are inside the grid pane, you can see I just added them in such a manner. Okay, so this is for the ease of reading of programmers. So you can see 0, and then you change to column 1, row 0, column 2, row 0, column 3, row 0. And then the same thing is done for like this. So you don't need to arrange them specifically in this position. I just arrange them like this, so it's easier for the reader to read and understand this code. You can position them anywhere you like, anyhow you like. Okay, so once we have all our buttons in the grid pane, we are going to add the grid pane and the text field to the VBox. So this is going to be, the VBox is going to be 1. And because the VBox itself is a pane, not an element, it's going to use a getChildren. And if you are only going to add one element, you can just use add. If you're going to add multiple, you use add all. And the text field has a name of main2, and the grid pane is main2a. So, oh no, is it main22? Oh yeah, because we are adding not the button but the grid pane. Okay, so aside from that, we have adding all the elements in a, we have arranged all the elements in a wanted position already. So now we are going to go ahead and show how it will turn out. So you want to declare a new scene and you want to put in the VBox. So this VBox, it is sitting on this scene called SC, and our name of the stage is vacant. So what we are going to do is that we are going to set a title. This title is going to be the name of the windows. So you can see if you are using a NetBeans, this is the title of this stage. So let the title be simple calculator, and you want to set the scene to that stage. So you use set scene, and you use the SC scene. What this does is that in the vacant stage, you give the scene as SC, and of course you can have multiple scene on a single stage. That will be covered later if I ever use it in my program. And then finally, you want to show it. So this show basically tells the program to display the stage. So if you don't have it, you will not have the windows, of course. So let us go ahead and try to run this. Okay, you can see that the buttons currently, they are in disarray. So you can see the entire third column is spanning this width, but the buttons itself, the sizes are not same. So what we are going to do to make it more beautiful is that we are going to have uniform sizes for all the buttons. So there's actually a formatting called, if for example we are setting it for the 0th button, it's called the set min width. What this is going to do is that it's going to tell the button to at least have a width of 50 pixels. And of course, you can use it height also. Since this is another advantage of using an array of button is that you can use loop to make that happen. So you don't need like 100 lines just to format every single button. And we have 19 buttons and something like this. Set min width, and it's going to be 50. It's going to be width and height. So this is going to set all 19 buttons with the desired width and height. So let us go ahead and try to run this and see what's going to happen. Okay, now it looks more neat. But this column of button is still not very cooperative. So you can use another width 60. This way the buttons won't be in a perfect square, but there will be a line. Okay, so if we have this program and we try to click the buttons, nothing's happened. This is because we haven't directed the button to any of the action events. When we click on a button, it fires an action event. But if you don't accept the action event and direct it somewhere else, it won't make anything happen. So the next thing you're going to do in the start method is that you're going to direct the event of the button. So what we are going to try is that we are going to do a Lambda expression. And don't be astounded by the name, it's just a very simple thing. So what you want to do is that you want a button. When you are setting a lambda expression, you need to use a final value. You cannot have a variable value here. The value indexing the button has to be final. So you do set on action. This set on action denotes that the button, if is interacted with, so it will catch that event. So the next thing you want to do is that you use a format to represent the event. So in this case, we use a small letter E, and we use an arrow to direct the event. So this is what it means for the JVM. And then you want to direct it to clear calculator. So this is a method we haven't deployed yet. So what this is going to do is that whenever we press this button, we will fire an action event, which will be called here, and then the event itself will be directed to clear calculator function, and we can put the function here. So now everything is correct. So since our first two buttons are all clearing, and the third button is clearing only one character, and the other buttons are expression buttons. So these are all expression buttons. They're going to add a element to the expression, and this is going to perform calculation on the expression. So you are going to have 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 separate functions, including this one. So let me just go ahead and set action for all the buttons. Now I have set the action for all the buttons. So what is happening here is that the back button is going to clear the expression by one character, so I call the function clear1. And what is happening here is a bit special. Basically, it is calling the add1 function because it's adding one character to the expression. It's called the add1 function, and it is taking an argument. So what this does is that because we are using this button itself, it has a text, right? So you can see the third index here, 0, 1, 2, 3. So the third index has a string of a divide symbol. So you want to actually pass the divide symbol to tell this function that what you have input. So the method we use to get it is by specifying the button dot get text. What get text does is that it returns you the content of the element. This get text can be used on buttons as well as label, text field, text area, basically a lot of those which contains string contents. So they are all set here, and the final equal sign is called equal pressed. So let's go ahead and initialize all these functions one by one. They're all going to be in private void type because they are not actually returning any value. Okay. And the add1 function is going to take in a string, and let's denote the string as something simple. Just name it text. Okay, so now you can see there's nothing wrong here. Now if you go and try to run the program, it still won't do anything because you have yet to add any functionalities in these functions themselves. So basically now you are directing the action event to an empty function. Okay, let's go ahead and see what we should do in these different functions. Okay, so now let's go over what we should do in the clear calculator function. In the clear calculator function, we should empty the expression. So we should empty this expression here. Also, we should clear off the string, both of this string, and reset both of these calculating integer variables. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to set text. So what the set text function is that it gives the string that will replace the original content in the text field. Since we are going to only make it empty, so it's just going to be an empty string, and then you need to clear out the strings. I mean, if you replace the string in your add1 function entirely, you don't need to clear it out. But if you are using the appending function, you need to clear it out. So this is what's going to happen here. And then you also need to reset the terms. Okay, so you're going to reset the terms. So this is the clear calculation function, the entire clear calculation function. So if anything were to happen in a future design of the program, we will modify this a bit. So let's move on to the clear one. So what the clear one is going to do is that it's going to take off one single character of the expression, but also take off one single character of either the terms or the operators. So what this means is that if you have 2 plus 3, if you have 2 plus 4, minus 3, minus 30, so if you press back, 30 will become 3. So you will need to modify the term. If you press back again, the entire term is thrown. So this is the second type of operation. If you press back again, you need to throw the operator of minus. And the moment you throw the operator of minus, the count of operators have gone down. So you need to consider all these different things going on. So when you press back again, it will just delete all, and until the last character, when you press back, this string has become empty, right? So what happened to an empty string when you press back again? The code will go wrong, the code will generate error, right? Because it cannot remove any character anymore. So you actually need a control variable to tell that the expression is empty now. You don't need to perform the back function. Just ignore the back button when it is pressed. So what is going to happen here is that you're going to have the is restart equals to 0. So if restart equals to 1 means that it's just restarted. So if it's going to be 0, it means that it's not just restarted. Let's go ahead and put that. You will see why this is implemented here later. Okay, and then you want to get the expression from the text because you want to remove a character from it. So I'm just going to name this whatever. So it's going to get text. We talked about this before. And only if the length is not 0, then we should remove the content. So we need to do this. We need to ensure that the length is not 0. Like this. So then we need to cut down the length. So what we are going to do here is we are going to use the substring function, and the substring function is going to take the index from 0 to length minus 1. So let's just ignore the 0 because by default it will take the index from 0. So it's going to take the index from 0 to minus 1. It means it's going to get a substring of this string but minus the last character. Okay, so oh no, this expression actually is not get the entire string except the last character. This is actually getting the last character itself. I'm sorry, I've confused myself. this denotes the index of the last element. Length minus 1 denotes the index of the last element. So this one is actually getting the removed character. So the removed character will help us in indicating whether it is an operator or a string of a term. So the next thing is that you want to cut down the last character is by using the substring again, and from 0 to length minus 1. So this is the one we wanted. So this will remove the last character in the RAM. So you can see it returns a substring, but it also reassigns the substring value. A bit of a... Okay. So now you want to update the text in the text field. So it's going to be using this. Okay, so now you have an entirely new expression in your program. So now whenever you click these two buttons, this field will be emptied, but it is still not enough. We need to clear off the terms and the operators. So okay, so if we specialize, because this one is holding the character that is removed, so we need to see if it equals. Because this is a string, so we can specialize, we can indicate it using a string like this. So if it equals either of the 4 operators, it is going to go into this function. Okay, like this. And then if it's going to be an operator, you want to set the operator equals to 0. So you're going to minus the count of operators first, right? And then you need to get the string to be equal to 0. So you initialize it to be nothing. The other thing you need to consider is that if you throw away the last operator on the field and you're doing the minus here, it's probably going to be going into the negative region. It's going to be minus 1. We will see about if it's going to be minus 1 later, so we will only see if that is going to happen. So for ease of checking the terms, if you are using a system.out.print line here, what's going to happen is that whatever's here is going to be printed here, this console, instead of, in this application. So it's going to be output in this console. So what we are going to do is that after operator deletion, and then maybe we want to get the operators. So we are not going to do the print line here. We are only going to print this with a space in between, white space. So it's going to be like this. And then finally we are going to print a empty line. Okay, so this will show us the new operator, the updated list of operators. Okay, so now the procedure to delete an operator is done with. So now we're going to do the procedure of deleting a term. So inside deleting a term, something is different is that when the term length is only 1 left, you need to perform a different operation from when there are a lot of characters left. For example, if you have like 560, when you delete this, it's only removing a single character. But if you are deleting the last character in a single term, you need to decrement the count of term as well as setting the term to be a null string, to be initialized into an empty string. So what we should do is that if the current term is having a length of 1, it's going to be a special deletion. So you're going to set the term to be a null term, empty string, and then you want to decrement the term is the counting itself, and then if the counting ever goes below 0, then set it to 0. Okay, and then we will have this one. We will try to see what the operation is doing for us. Okay, so this is going to be 100 because we have 100 terms maximum. Okay, after term deletion. Okay, so the other case is that if the length is not equal to 1, which means that the length is more, we are going to delete it. Just very normally, just use the substring. So what's going to happen here is that in the current term, we are going to modify the current term by using the substring with a shortened by 1. So dot length minus 1. So this thing here, dot length minus 1. Okay, so the expression is correct. So now we'll just get it to run this piece of code here. So if you want your code to be very nice and neat and everything, you can simply generate a function which will print the term out, and then every time you need this function, you just invoke the single function. So you don't need a duplication of codes like this. Actually, duplication of codes is bad. It's considered not a good coding practice, but sometimes if it's just a simple 2 or 3 pieces of them, it's fine. Okay, so this is what we are going to do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have all the closing. So if you click on here, we actually tell you up above. So we have closed this properly. Every single bracket has been closed properly. Okay, so the clear one function is basically done with. So now we want to do the add1 function. The add1 function is going to add a character to the expression, and depend on the type of character input, it will going to be entered into the operators or the terms. And then one important thing is that you cannot have 2 operators consecutively. So okay, so another important thing is that if we just restarted, you will have if we just restarted, meaning we just press the enter, you will have a different expression here, but your records are already cleared. So if you just restarted, you cannot let the user input straight away. You want to set the text to clear it. Empty text. And then you want to avoid stucking in this loop, you want to set it to 0 again. Okay, so this is a one-way control statement. Okay, so let's start. You're going to get the value as usual, because you're going to append something to it, and the value to appending is given to us here. So equals to get text, and then you have to implement it. You have to append like this, and then you have to set the text. So it's going to be like this. Okay, So the next thing you're going to do is that you want to decide either if it's operator or not. So it's going to implement the same if function here. Just get that if function all the way here. Okay. And it's going to be text here because we're using the text here. Okay. So we also want it to be not operator as the last input because we cannot have two operators side by side. So last insert dot equals why do I put the parentheses here? Okay, dot equals any operators. So this is basically what we want. So we want a different sign here. Okay, what this means is that only if the last insert character is not an operator, then we can insert any operator inside. Okay, so this is what the if nested if condition is going to be sending. Now we want to input the operator, we want to update the operators, so we need to update the operators like this. Okay, so it's going to be set to text because the text is basically just a string of the operator. And then we want to increment the term, we want to increment the operator, because when you are entering an operator, you are going to the next term, so you want to increment the counting of term. And when you're entering an operator, you're going to have one more operators. So basically this is it. So now we are going to see the number of operators in the console. This is just for the recording purposes. So this is not deletion, this is addition. And then we will go, so if this is not, because we have actually added the text here, so if it ended up being another operator again, we want to clear it out. So what we want to clear it out is that we want to get a substring again, so we cannot actually use it, print it here yet. So ram is going to be ram dot substring from 0 to ram dot length -1. Yep, something like this. Okay, let us close this and we'll go to input of a term. So if the user is input a term, we are going to have C terms appending with the text, and then we need to update the last insert to be the text. Actually, you need to update the last insert to be the text here also. Okay, so if you are going to be inputting an operator, it's going to update it to be an operator. Okay, so now we are going to get the content here. Wrap. And then for the sake of monitoring, we are going to get the terms here. Here. After term addition. Okay, so that is basically all we should do in the Add1 function. I think everything is correct. So now let's move on to the equal press function. What it's going to do is that it's going to count the value upon pressing the equal button. So we're going to have a float temporary variable. This is just the name of the variable. The reason to use float is that in multiplication and division, it will often end up being a float value. So there's one other thing to consider is that if a user did not press a number to begin with, if he or she press a operator, for example, like divide by 2, right? Divide by 2. What this means is that you have a 0, you have an empty term here. And in our program, we are going to set it to be by default, and empty is going to be a 0. So what this is going to be doing is that if the term is 0, so if the term here equals an empty term, then set it to be a 0. So this should avoid any error. And then one other thing that's going to be different is that in the first loop, we cannot actually loop over the entire expression. The first and second term, we should add it by hand. That's because we use the nature of plus equals, minus equals, something like this, all of this, sign, times equals. So this is used in a loop, but since the starting value of our variable is 0, it's only valid for plus equals and minus equals. You cannot have times equals. So you cannot have like temp times equals the first term. It's never going to work out because it's always going to be a 0. So for the first and second term, you should add it by manually. So you're going to switch. So this switch is based on the first operator, and you have all the different cases here. So let me just go ahead and type all the different cases here. Hey, so this is what we are going to do. So it's going to be taking the first term and the second term, and it's going to be passing the double value, converting the string into a double value. So since this is a double value and this is a float, it will be a lossy conversion. So what you want to do is that you want to typecast this double value into a float for this type of operations to be as precise as possible. So this is what this entire expression means. So now you have a initialized value for the temp. Now going on ahead, you can starting to use the loop. So what you're going to do is that since you have the first and the second term covered, you can start with index 1, which means because you are considering the first operation here, operator, and starting from the loop, you want to consider the first operator. Alright? And this is going to be controlled by the counting of term, right? Because you want the maximum to be the number of term. And you also want to implement this. If any of the term in between is 0, you want to do this. And you want to judge it based on the operators, because you need to use an index of C, because throughout this loop, you're going to loop over this value. So you're going to do this. Let's just get the code here. One thing that's different is we are going to do plus equals, something like this, minus equal, times equal, and divide equal. And this is going to be controlled by the loop as well. And the first term is already added, and the second value is 2. So the second value, the continued value is 2, and you have 1 to begin with, so it's going to be denoted by C plus 1. So this is true for the rest of the terms, and this is going to do the rest of the operations for us. So now you need to actually now you want to convert this into a string. So you want it to be, because it's a float value, So you want it to be a string. Anything you want to convert into a string is easy. You just concatenate it with a double quotation without anything inside. So this entire expression, it will return a string value to temp2. And then finally, temp2 is going to get input into the text field. So this is what's going to happen. And then you want to clear out all the stuff. So you want this, because every time you press the enter, everything is clear. So you want this here. And then you want to set the is restart to 1. So this is where the magic happens. Okay, so now we should have a properly working calculator here. Let's just go and try it out and see if it's working correctly. So let us go with 8 times 9. So you can see you have a operation and you have 2 terms here. Let me enlarge it. Okay, so we have 8 times 9 times 6 times 5, and it's going to give us some value. And clear the calculator. Clearing the calculator will clear all these terms and operators. So if we click the terms again, it will start off with just a single term. Plus 3 minus 2. But let's say if I don't want minus 2 here, I just click the back. Okay, see now, we remove the 2, it is left with 7 and 3. And we remove the minus sign, it is left with just the plus sign. So you can go all the way back. You can get an entirely new expression, 2 plus 2 equals to 4. So this is what we want. So back button doesn't work when it's displaying the result, right? Because we wouldn't want to do any operation with the result. So 9 back. So you can see the term is deleted. So if you start it with an operator, it's going to be 0 by 2. You can see that it is displayed as a empty term, but when you click it, it's going to be 0. So the result is correct and no error is done here. Okay, so this is the calculator. And one last thing is that you don't want this to be editable. You can type in manually here. So we don't want that because the program is not set up to input it like this. So what's going to happen is that you are going to set it. You're going to set the text field to be not editable. The function you want is this. It's going to be a boolean value. Okay, so it should work correctly now. Okay, now you cannot edit it. Now you cannot edit it by hand. You can only display values. Okay, so this is all the details in doing a calculator. This is a very simple calculator. You can even display the fractions. Yep, so that's basically all the details, and good luck and have fun in your studies. Thank you for watching this video.